Welcome to the release webinar for Squish Test Center 2.0. Squish Test Center 2.0 was released about 4 weeks ago on the 15th of December. With this new version of Squish Test Center, we introduced manual testing as a new feature. And this is also what I will be focusing on for this webinar. So I will be giving you an overview of the manual testing feature, and afterwards I will quickly go over the changelog to highlight some of the other improvements and features that are part of this release. If you have any questions, you can write them down in the questions box and I will go over those at the end as well. Okay, let's first start with creating a new project for our manual tests. You don't have to create a dedicated project for manual testing. You can also use an existing project in case you want to view your manual test results and automated test results within the same project side by side. That is entirely possible. However, I just want to use this opportunity to show you the new Add Project feature. So here at the top in the project dropdown, you will find now a new entry at the bottom of the list, which is the Add Project entry. And if I click that, I can specify a project name. So for this demo, let's call it demo project and create the project. Once the project is created, you can choose between either uploading automated test results or managing manual tests. And this is what we want to do, manage manual tests. This brings us to the new manual testing section. This section is subdivided into 3 subsections that are represented by tabs. So in the first tab, we have the test management. And this is all about creating, editing, and maintaining manual tests. In the second tab, we have the execution configuration, which is about organizing a test cycle by creating and assigning manual test executions to your testers. And in the third tab, the execution overview, you can see the status and progress of the currently active test cycles. And of course, there's also a dedicated view for testers to execute manual tests, which I will get to later. I will now show you each of these sections in a little bit more detail. And let's start right away with the test management. We try to make it really easy and seamless, as seamless as possible to create new manual tests or to edit existing tests. So there's no forms and you don't need to confirm anything. There's really no page transition, so it should really be a very fluid process so that you can quickly churn through the manual tests that you need. For this demo, I tried to pick an example test case that is difficult to automate. So the assumption here is that we want to test that our application can be uninstalled using the operating system's application management. So for that, first we need to create a test suite. So there's this create test suite button up here. And once we do that, we have to decide whether we want a BDD style test suite, which has features and scenarios, or whether we want to use a more basic test case with steps. In this case, I'll leave it at the more basic variant with just a test case and steps. Okay. Then let's pick a name maybe. So let's call the test suite installer tests. And let's create a test case. So to create a test case, I can either click on it and use this plus test case button up here, or I can click directly here to create a new test case. So let me see if that actually works. So for this demo, I just decided to copy over most of the text and not type it. So we'll call this test case verify the application can be uninstalled using the operating system's app management. And I'll just add a description. I see that that's really maybe the tool is stopping to share, so maybe just type it after all. So yeah, we also need a precondition to tell our testers what they need to make sure, what needs to be done before they can run the test. So in these descriptions, we can use Markdown. So to highlight the text and format it to make it a little bit nicer to look at. Download. And then maybe just some link that we add. Okay. Then we save that. So there's also some Markdown help. If you're not familiar with Markdown, at the bottom left here, there's a help that can help you to style the text. But what we found is essentially that just using Markdown helps with the, there's no weird transition between like what you see is what you get editor and the source view, if there's just the source view. And yeah, so everybody who's able to edit Wikipedia can now also write formatted manual tests. Yeah, now we can simply add steps. So one option to add a step is using this add step button up here. Maybe I close the help again. And yeah, let's just quickly type in some text here. Description. So what is important here is, so the title is just a broad summary of what needs to be done in the step. And this might be a bit different to tools that you might already know. Because this is actually what ultimately will primarily be displayed in the result views. So this shouldn't actually, so the title shouldn't contain actual descriptions of what needs to be done. It's just like a short abbreviation, what needs to be done at the step, and then the description should contain the actual description of what needs to be done to execute the step. Now for each step on the right hand side, we have a small menu here where we can also add attachments, for example, or we can add new steps before and after. We can delete the step. Yeah, let me just add a step after, and then we go, I'll copy some more values in here. And we will go on to do that one more time. This time there's another change. So for the last step, I want to use in a reference image. So let's say, we don't want to explain everything with words. We want to maybe also just have a reference image. So what I can do is I can upload an attachment here, and I pick that here. And now I can also insert the attachment into the text. So by using Markdown syntax, I can simply reference the image here, and that will make it show up in the formatted text. What I can also do if I say, okay, maybe I don't want the image in the text, and but then I decide that maybe I do want it, then there's we do store the state of the page, and we have some undo redo features. So if you make a change that you are maybe in the end not happy with, you can easily jump back between the two versions, and you won't lose any progress. So if you accidentally change something, there's some security there. And yeah, let's add a last step. All right. Now that we have created our first test case, I also want to show you that you can use shared steps to speed up the test creation process. So let's say we want to create another installer test. And this time maybe we want to just verify the application can be installed and launched. And now what we can do is that instead of creating every step manually, we can use the existing step feature, where we can say, okay, actually for the first things that I need to do I might have already have the correct step to achieve that. So for example, installing the app and getting to some like initial state might always be the repetition of something that you have already done for other tests. So here we can select two of the existing steps, and then when we confirm, then we see that we have added now a shared step. And if I edit this step, then I'll get notified that do I want to change just this instance of the shared step, or do I want to create or I want to change all steps. In this case, I don't want to change it actually. So let's just cancel that. Okay, so yeah, so as you can see, shared steps can help you leverage that test cases oftentimes share the same initialization steps and prerequisites. Yeah, and now that we have created our manual tests, we want to schedule them for execution. And to do that, let's move on to the next section, the execution configuration. In this view, you can find the exact same hierarchy as in the previous view, just that this time around it's read-only, and you can only select individual tests. So here you do not edit the text, and you do not remove attachments. You can just verify, okay, this is the test that I actually want to execute. And then you can select the test that you want to create an execution for. Up here in the batch view, we can now specify a batch name, which is like the test cycle for a batch. Or the batch is like a test cycle for manual testing. So then yeah, I can set an assignee, but I do not need to do it right now. So if I want to leave it unassigned for now, that's fine as well. And I can specify labels. So this is also the same as you might know it from the automated testing in Squish Test Center. So in this case, this is a test that only makes sense on Windows, or which is pretty Windows specific. So let's do that. And once I create the test, what will also happen is that the demo user, so demo@project.com, will get notified that there is a new test execution for them to work on. One more thing that so let's create another, maybe an unassigned execution for this test as well, or maybe two. Okay. Yeah, now that we have scheduled our manual tests, we can go and check on the current status of the test cycle. And for that, we go to the execution overview. Yeah, if I'm just a tester, I can filter this view to only show the items that are assigned to me. And if I'm a test manager, I can filter it to see all the executions. And here, yeah, I can see the current status of the execution, so whether it's passed or failed. In this case, they don't yet have a status because nobody worked on them yet. And I can also see the completion percentage, which in this case is also at 0%, but this tells me roughly, okay, how many steps have been executed so far. And yeah, on this view, I can also do assignment and reassignment. So if somebody doesn't get to do their tests because they're busy, we can reassign it to other users. In this case, this instance only has one user, but we can maybe assign this also to ourselves. And yeah, and then we can move on to the actual execution of manual tests. So on the right-hand side here, we see this play button. And with that, we can jump into the execution and actually do the manual test. So let's do that maybe. Yeah, this is the execution view. And this is where testers can actually execute manual tests. And in the top left corner, we see the test cycle again. So that's the one that we just created. And we can also see information about the configuration. So we specified that this test should be done on Windows. So this is using the labels concept that you might already know from automated tests. And yeah, then on the right-hand side, we simply get the test case description and the list of steps that the tester should follow. The important difference compared to the previous views that we looked at is that now there is this action bar underneath the active step where we can set the result of a step. So whether we could successfully execute the step or whether the execution failed. So in this case, let's say, okay, we installed the app correctly, but then maybe something about the installation doesn't work. And so we have to say, okay, this step failed. And what we can do once we fail a step is that we have some actions here available. So we could add some description, for example. So what went wrong, or what did you observe? And those then will then be passed on to the result page where they can be documented. You can also add attachments. So if you want to make a screenshot of what you see, that's very easy. Or you can create a Jira issue. Yeah, for this project, I didn't yet set up a Jira account, but I have a different project open where I already created a Jira account. So here you can see that we actually improved our Jira integration quite a bit. So previously, the issue tickets created from Test Center were always pre-filled and there was like a default text. Now you get a lot more freedom, so you can choose a project for which you want to create it. You can choose the issue type, and you can also specify custom fields. So there's this settings icon where if you have some specific field that you want to always be set, that you can configure it, and then you can select assignees, add descriptions, and summaries. And yeah, I don't want to create one in our test instance right now, but I already created one earlier. So this is already a link to a created Jira issue. So if I click on that, I'll get directly to Jira. And once the execution, so the manual execution is finished, this linking of Jira associations will also translate over to the traceability view that you might already know. Okay, but let's go back to our actual execution. So now let's say, okay, this test failed, then there's this shortcut here to say, okay, if one step failed, usually it doesn't make sense to do the other steps, so I can just skip them all, and then those are marked as skipped, and then I can also quickly finish the execution, which I will do now. And yeah, then I have the option either to jump directly to the Explore view, or in this case, let's go back to the overview for a short moment, just so that you can see how finished execution look like in the overview. So here we can now see that we have a checkered flag icon here, which tells us, okay, this execution has finished. We also see, okay, this execution failed, sadly. And yeah, we can see who executed it. And yeah, instead of the play button, we now see the explore icon, which will take us to the explore view. And yeah, for those that are already using Squish Test Center, this is where we get back into known territory. So here you view your manual test results right next to your automated test results. And of course, all the analysis features that you are used to for your automated test also work for manual tests. So you can use the history and the explore view. You can use the pivot. In this case, I only have one label, so it's not very interesting. And yeah, if I click on the failed icon to get to the verification view, we can also see that all the descriptions and preconditions that we saw on the manual testing view also get transferred over to the result view and get documented, so that, you know, if you want to look back at your results, you still see what has been tested and what did the testers encounter. So yeah, you will see attachments and everything that's relevant for the manual test execution. Okay, that is all that I wanted to show you in regards to manual testing. Now let's have a quick look at some of the other important improvements that are part of the 2.0 release. So for that, I will go to the release notes real quick. So the manual testing I already covered now. Yeah, video playback is something that you can't yet really use because the relevant Squish version isn't released yet. But yeah, sometime in the first quarter we should be releasing Squish 7, which then supports video recording during automated testing. And yeah, those videos can then be played back in Test Center. Maybe I can just give you a small teaser here. So this is a test that was recorded with the new video feature. And if we go to the failures, then we see, okay, next to the failure icons, we have these little movie clips. And if I click on it, I get to the movie player or video player in Test Center. And yeah, here we get an entirely new view on test results. So we jump to this failure here, and we can then play back the video and see, okay, how did this failure transpire? So in this case, it's just some failure I generated, so it's not very interesting, but we can see the entire playback. So in this case, I just increment this text field value just to show, okay, we do some verification, we do some logging, and then stuff happens in the AOT. So this is a new way to look at test results and failures that happen during test execution. And yeah, so sometime in Q1, you will be able to make use of that as well. Okay, moving on, we now also have support for authentication proxies. So if you use an OAuth authentication provider like Okta or some other providers, I can show maybe. So we based this off of what is called the OAuth 2 proxy. And so all these providers here should now that work together with the OAuth 2 proxy should now also be able to work together with Test Center so that yeah, authentication is delegated to the OAuth proxy. And yeah, that might be helpful for some of you, depending on your internal IT setup. Then there were some minor explore page improvements. So if we go back to any result here, let's maybe go back to this result. You can now also download all batch reports. So in this case, there's just one report, but previously, if you had multiple reports, you had to always go to each report and then export it using the zip file export, for example. And this can now be simplified by using the download all batch reports function. There's also a feature now to add labels to all reports. So if you have a label that you want to add to all reports of a batch, that can easily be done now using this button. And one use case might be a new label we introduced, which is, I think, documented down here, the scheduling maintenance label. And if you set that to keep, then the report that you set that label for will not be affected by maintenance. So if you frequently run into memory consumption or hard disk consumption issues and you want to get rid of some of the test results, but you want to keep very specific test runs forever, then you can use this label to mark them, and then you have a bit of an easier time to define a maintenance time frame where yeah, your database is cleaned up, so to say. Then another important improvement is that we took another look at the JUnit import. So we try to retain a little bit more information. So in the past, we actually ignored some commonly used attributes. And yeah, we try to improve the mapping so that all the attributes you set in your JUnit reports actually end up in Test Center in a sensible way. So we are now much closer to what Jenkins does or how Jenkins Jenkins interprets JUnit results. So if you in the past maybe had issues with that, then you can take another look and see if that now works better for you. In terms of the integrations, we now have support for the cloud version of Zephyr. So that is if you use a cloud Jira instance that has the Zephyr plugin installed, that will now also work. Previously, it only worked with server instances that you host yourself. Then again, yeah, what I already showed you, the Jira issue creation. So the improved dialog also is available on the Explore view. And yeah, maybe the last thing I want to highlight is that we increased the size of the screenshot BP dialogues. So previously it was sometimes a little bit hard to look at screenshots that were taken in full screen because the screenshot dialog didn't always expand to full screen size. So that should now be a little bit more comfortable. Okay, that were the most important improvements that I wanted to show you today. We would have now time for some questions. So far, I see there are no questions yet. So yeah, I'll stay here for another minute or so, and we'll see if there's a question coming in. Okay, we got one question. Let me read the question. It's about licensing. So if there's different licenses for users and yeah, every user needs a license. So I would say our primary licensing factor is viewing results. So there is no difference between uploading results or doing anything. So it's just every user that actually views test center pages should have a license. And yeah, there is a question regarding the Azure DevOps integration, whether we can only push or pull a subset for those. I mean, we could, yes. But we should first find out the other issues that you mentioned. Like we should find out the root cause for those first. So if you could get back to me on the questions I asked you regarding what actually is going wrong, that would be helpful. But yeah, we can discuss any change. So we already did something similar, as you can see, for Polarion actually. So we made it possible to only pull subsets. It's entirely thinkable to also do that for Azure. But yeah, we first need to figure out what is actually going wrong, why isn't everything pulled, and so on. Like even if it's a lot, it should still work. And yeah, another question that is going in a similar direction, if we can also provide integrations with other systems, we absolutely can, yes. The easiest is if you contact support@froglogic.com. So contact our support, say which integration you are interested in, and then what we do is we track it internally. So we have in our Jira, we have Epic for all kinds of integrations, and we see, okay, how many customers are interested in those, and then we see if we can do something. Okay. There seem to be no more questions. Oh, one more question just came in. Yeah, it was so the question was whether the roles that we have in our test center. So we have 3 different roles: admin, upload, user. If these influence whether or not you can create and edit manual tests, and right now there is no relation. So everybody can edit and create manual tests. So we don't have any restrictions on that. Okay, then yeah, if there's further questions, don't hesitate to write to our support@froglogic.com, and I can also answer questions by email if maybe after the webinar you can think of a question or yeah. But otherwise, this concludes the webinar. So I would like to thank you for taking the time to participate in this webinar, and I would wish you a nice day. Stay healthy. Bye bye.